competence is basically ability to apply knowledge and skills to achieve intended results. Let me give an example. If you turn a vehicle on the right side, it will turn to right. If you turn to left, it is going to turn left. If you apply accelerator, the vehicle will speed up. If you apply brake, it will stop. That's basic knowledge. This is important to know. And also you need to know you have to apply clutch when you are changing the gear, if it is a manual gear. So you apply clutch, shift the gear. At that point of time, do not accelerate. And after the gear is changed, you apply the accelerator. This is the basic knowledge of driving. With this, do you feel anyone can drive? No. You need to develop skill. You need to know how to maneuver, what speed is. You can manage how to turn, what is the basic skill that you develop. So by practice, you develop the skill of driving. So you have got the knowledge and you have got the skill. Combination of these two makes you competent. So a driving license is given based on tests. They test the knowledge, they check the knowledge, as well as the skill to drive a vehicle, reverse it, drive it on slope, stop it on slope, move it on slope, turn, park, whatever they want to check. They check the skill, and based on that, it is certified. So if I put it back once again, if I put it back, competence is ability to apply knowledge and skill to achieve intended results. Let's see the requirement of ISO 9001 with regard to competence, what the standard requires with regard to competence, and how we can assess competence. Let us look at ISO 9001-2015 standard, clause number 7.2, what the standard requires for competence assessment. Clause number 7.2, competence. The standard requires the organization shall A, determine the necessary competence of persons doing work under its control that affects the performance and effectiveness of the quality management system. B, ensure that these persons are competent, means they have got necessary knowledge and the skill to attain objectives and perform their task well on the basis of appropriate education. They have to have sufficient education on the subject, training, they have to be trained, or experience and have sufficient experience. Now, the competence can be built by working together, by training, by appropriate education. Whatever is the requirement has to be defined. For a person doing inspection, for example, with a graduate engineering degree, could be 5 years experience is good enough. But for a diploma, it might take a longer experience. For example, a diploma with 8 to 10 years experience can do the same job. Therefore, the education, qualification, and experience and the training all are to be included in competence metrics. In clause number C, the standard requires, where applicable, take action to acquire the necessary competence. Where applicable, if you find in some cases the level of competence is not adequate and it has to be enhanced or improved, in that case, the organization needs to take action to acquire this competence. And this can be by providing additional training, co-working, hiring external resources or whatever. And if we are providing the training to evaluate the effectiveness of the actions taken. Now, you have possibly needed to enhance the competence of certain person to perform certain tasks. Now, you have sent them for training, or you have organized a training, have them trained. Now, you have to evaluate whether after the training, their level of competence has really improved? Can they do the new task for which they were given the training? So evaluation of the effectiveness of the training or the action is important. And in clause number 7.2d, the standard requires retain appropriate documented information, as evidence of competence. So you have to provide appropriate requirements, whatever record is suitable to demonstrate that these people are competent. It could be training record, it could be their work record, co-working, training, or whatever other measures you have taken to build the competence has to be retained as a documented information. So these are some of the requirements of the standard. Now, how to audit? In the first place, you will ask, the organization is required to determine the competence. Have you determined? The answer could be yes or no. If it is yes, great. Can you show the competence requirement of various persons affecting quality management system? For example, TCB is a training organization. Tutor's performance is extremely important, and this is one of the most key position whose work will have influence on the quality of your service delivery, quality of your work. All right. Can I have a look at what is the requirement for competence of TCB tutors? Great. So you are required to provide the evidence. Let's see what kind of competence requirement for tutors are identified in TCB. Now the next question would be, great, this is what standard requires. Can you please show what is TCB's competence requirement for the tutors? How have you addressed this requirement of the standard? Let's have a look at it, and let's have a look at what is TCB's competence requirement for the tutors and the lead tutors. Let's have a look. So here is a TCB SOT Worldwide LLC tutors competence requirement. This is for CQI IRC approved lead auditor courses. Now, while we have defined this requirement, it is extremely important that we meet the minimum requirements set by IRCA for the tutors and the lead tutors. IRCA brief requirement is that tutor must be competent to deliver the training, must have their competence criteria fulfilled as minimum. Let's see what is IRCA requirement and how TCB has addressed those requirements into their management system. So these is the metrics. These are the competence attributes for the lead tutor, and trainee tutors. And the remarks are also given whether we meet and where we stand with regard to this competence requirement. The first one is mandatory educational qualification. One of the most important requirements set by IRCA is the lead tutor must have completed successfully a lead auditor training course on quality management system. So successful completion of IRCA approved lead auditor course is a mandatory requirement. Now, educational requirement, bachelor's degree is highly preferred set by TCB. It's not a mandatory requirement of IRCA that the lead tutor must be a bachelor's degree holder. But for principal auditor, that's a requirement. So we have set the requirement at a higher level so that we get more capable tutors having stronger educational background so that their level of competence is higher than above average or higher than average. And minimum is a diploma. That's what we understand. That's what we have to ensure that the tutors are at least a technical diploma. Preferred professional qualification. We have set additional requirement that the tutors must have either MBA or BBA or advanced management program, because we consider quality management system essentially is a management system standard. So a person having a good understanding of management principles, business management practices, running an organization would have a greater understanding of how a corporate level manager thinks and what is expected. Because as an auditor, you are auditing the highest level of the person in the organization, who could be the chairman, directors of the organization who are highly qualified and professionally qualified persons. So if the lead tutor and the lead auditor does not meet that level of competence, the audit cannot be very effective. You will not be able to talk the language that the top management persons of the organization speaks. Therefore, we have set the criteria that in addition to a graduation level, our tutor must have some professional qualification in the management, like MBA, BBA, or AMP. Train the trainers, and accelerated learning is an essential training identified or required by IRC. Why it's a training program for the adults? So it is extremely important that tutors are capable of delivering a professional kind of a training for the adult learners. And accelerated learning is a training process, is a process to develop capable tutors, how to deliver the training, how to engage the learners better, how to communicate the messages and the knowledge effectively, and conduct the courses professionally. So accelerated learning is a mandatory training required by IRC. Good understanding and technical knowledge in the course related subject. Quite obviously, you are training quality management systems, so you are required to have a great knowledge on the subject. ISO 9000, currency of the subject specific knowledge in the latest standard. As you know, the standard keeps on changing. Every 5 years, ISO standards are revised and reissued. So the new standard may have additional requirements. Some of the old requirement might have been discontinued and so on and so forth. So therefore, the lead tutor or the lead auditors will have to have a thorough understanding of the latest standard and requirement and be updated of the latest changes in force. Good knowledge of formal and informal method of assessment. The tutors are required to have demonstrated competence on assessment. The formal assessment means there is a guideline to assess, there is a defined output they have to produce, and there is a guideline for marking and so on. This is a structured way of assessing. The informal way of assessing as well. For example, the kind of questions that they are asking would give the depth of their understanding, how they are thinking, what is their thought process, whether they are reaching the learning objectives, whether they are achieving the learning objectives, or they're confused. So based on their questions they ask, you will be able to assess whether they're learning the subject well and they're progressing well in their learning journey. Next is knowledge on the learning theories and how people learn. Of course, by accelerated learning, you are going to learn about visual, audio, application of visual, body kinesthetics, and so on. So these are some of the techniques to engage the learners, asking questions, looking at their eyes, looking at their type of question, body language, etc. All the sign. Body language is one of the most important things. You can see the joy of learning or stress, the wrinkles in the forehead. All these things will give an indication whether they're enjoying the program or under level of stress or having questions in their mind, so you can intervene at the real time. Now, next is 3.4 is good knowledge on the theory of learning you have discussed. Point number 4 is a tutoring skill. So the tutors have to demonstrate they have got tutoring skill, and this can be attained by working together with an approved lead tutor. At least one training they have to, attend, and can be gained by joining one course with a TCB approved lead tutor. So if a trainee lead tutor is joining, they can work together with the TCB approved lead tutor, and once one program is run, it is to be evaluated. The lead tutor will give a feedback, a peer group review that the trainee lead tutor has attained the level of competence so that They can henceforth run the course independently. Be able to test student understanding of new information through questioning and eliciting. In other words, you should be able to ask questions and explain the topics and give the response, and from the response you will progress in the learning journey, and you can explain if they have made some mistakes, or have a good discussion based on the question and answer. This is one of the requirement. The next is be able to manage session timing. The program is 40 hours. Each session has been allocated some amount of time. So you have to complete the session within the time with reasonable variation. But you cannot drag a program for 5 days into 7 days or so on. So therefore, and you cannot complete it earlier than defined. So in other words, there could be some amount of variation, minor variation. 5-10 minutes is fine, reasonably, but the training should start at the right time and end reasonably on the right time. So you have to manage the sessions effectively. Next is be able to manage sessions. Okay, tutor's experience. We have talked about you have to lead tutor's experience is lead and conversion auditor courses. The lead tutor must meet the criteria of the lead and principal auditor grades. So when you are training as a lead tutor, you have to have equivalent grade competence as a lead auditor. So this is how the requirements have been defined by IRCA. And audit skill, of course, you should be current in auditing. You should be able to perform audits effectively and practicing auditor. So these are the requirements: auditor plus 3 audits as team leader, 15 man-days and 10 man-days on-site. This is the lead auditor qualification requirement to be approved as an IRC approved lead auditor. So a lead tutor must meet this minimum requirement as well. IRC registration in respective grade is highly preferred. It's not mandatory that all lead tutors must be IRC registered lead auditor, but it's extremely important that they meet that grade requirement. So if for a lead auditor approval, this person must meet the lead auditor grade requirement set forth by IRC. Other competence and attributes: good command in English. Of medium of our instruction is English, so it is expected that the tutor is proficient in the language and can communicate flawlessly without any accent, so that your pronunciations are understood, your communication is clear. That's very important. So you should have a clear English. Ideally, IELTS is one of the method of assessing the competence, but it is not mandatory. But we assess the person is fluent in the language and fluent in English communication. Next is pleasing personality. Of course, you are delivering training to a different level of person, so you have to have pleasing personality, a very strong personality, interpersonal skill. You should be a very friendly person. You should be able to communicate frankly and freely. You should be able to make friendship in no time with the audience and connect with the audience. So that's a very important thing. Your dress code and other attributes are very, very important. And good communication skill. Of course, you should be a great communicator. You should be able to, communication is not throwing information. Communication is a two-way channel. So what you are communicating is being received by the recipient, the learners, and again, you are assessing whether they've learned. So then the learning cycle is completed. So you have to have this level of proficiency. This is IRCA requirement, has been addressed in TCB competence requirement. Great. So one part we have discussed what the standard requires the organization to define and identify competence requirement. It is also an IRC requirement for the tutors to have certain level of competence. So we have defined that meets IRC requirement as well as ISO 9001 requirement. So this is established. We have established a system. We have established competence criteria. Now we have to provide evidence that whether TCB tutors meet these competence requirement. That's the next question. Let's see what is the evidence TCB maintains to demonstrate that the tutors meet this requirement. So now let's see the evidence of competence that TCB retains for demonstrating conformity to the competence requirement in accordance with ISO 9001 as well as IRC requirement. So we have taken the sample of the tutored MS Ray. So the question would be, we found MS Ray is one of the tutor delivering training as a lead tutor on behalf of TCB. Can you show that he meets the requirement of IRCA with regard to the qualification as an engineer, as he has completed IRCA approved quality management system lead auditor training. He has completed accelerated learning training, as well as he is approved and maintains IRCA registration, which is an added advantage to demonstrate that his knowledge is current and he is maintaining all those level of competence independently certified by IRCA. So, well, this is a good question. Let's see what kind of record is maintained. Here it is. This is TCB Cert Worldwide TCB's tutor CV. This is the format used by TCB to include all the necessary qualification, competence, training, and certification. It is MS Ray is an engineer, and the contact detail and so on. He was at the time already an approved lead tutor on behalf of some of the organization. He attained the training from a company called IQC Singapore, and it was an IRC approved course. And he has got the lead tutor qualification and competence already approval in the previous organization. So the number of program that he has conducted and all those things are documented here. And based on that, other qualification is advanced management program. If you remember, one of the competence that we have identified is MBA or PBA or advanced management program. So this is one of the competence requirement of the qualification is met with here. One of the requirement was that the person is having a professional qualification in management studies. Here he has completed advanced management program from IIM Calcutta. And other auditor qualifications, everything is given, experience, and the organization, all the details are given here. And he has been approved as the lead tutor and assigned TCB 01 TCB tutor ID. And he has been approved in the grade of lead tutor. So that's the approval record. Now, what is the basis? All right, this is the graduation degree certificate of Mr. Ray as a degree as a graduate engineer. This is the qualification of Mr. Ray as a graduate engineer from University of Calcutta. He completed this in 1985, and this is the training. This is the certificate of successful completion in the quality management system lead auditor training based on ISO 9000 2000 series of standard, which was done at that point of time and subsequently upgraded to the newer version of the standard. It was done in 2003. This is the accelerated learning certification, which was done by learning process. So this to confirm that MS Ray has attended one-day accelerated learning workshop. So that's a mandatory requirement. And these are the lead auditor card given by IRCA that shows the person maintains all those requirements. So this is how the training qualification records are retained. So now what we have discussed so far is as per ISO 9001 2015 clause number 7.2, we have gone through the requirements. These were the requirements. The standard required the organization to set the competence criteria, provide training and other competence building measures, see the effectiveness of the training and other building measures, competence building measures, and retain record of all such competence building measures. And then we have looked at what kind of competence requirement has been addressed by TCB to address the requirement of 7.2 of ISO 9001 standard, as well as in this competence building, because it is an IRC approved training, IRC requirement for the trainers and the tutors also has to be mandatorily included. And then in the last part, we have seen there is verifiable evidence, objective evidence that the person is qualified as an engineer. He has attended the lead auditor course and successfully completed it. He has attended an accelerated learning training and successfully completed it, and also maintains IRC registration in the highest grade as principal auditor. This is how you are going to audit competence. So, to summarize, when you go for an audit, you will ask what kind of competence requirement they have identified, and you take some samples for people doing work. Those work will affect quality management system. Few samples you can take and go through their records that those people are competent based on the identified criteria. And also, there is a verifiable evidence that they retain those records for a defined period of time. And if you have noticed that certification and all those records were done in 2010 in the beginning, so now in 2024, all these years, the records are maintained. So it gives an evidence that there is a robust record retaining system, established and implemented by TCB. So I hope everything is clear. Let's move on to the next point.